Well, why don't we start with just a minute or two of silence to gather our energies, our presence, and if there's anyone else who is struggling to join us, they can do that. And in these last few moments of grounding, taking stock of what's here, what's present for you, and inviting in anything else that might be supportive, perhaps a deepening of the breath, perhaps a little wiggle, a movement, a sway, a stretch. Welcome. Deep welcome to all of you. My name is Rahil. I use they, them pronouns. I am joining you all from unceded Lishanaloni land, colonially known as Oakland. I am coming with many lineages behind and beside me, as are we all. For me, that includes Theravadan and Vajrayana paths within Buddhism. Welcome. And it also includes my Ismaili Shia Muslim path that I was born into and still hold dear to me. And relevant as it may come up today, I also hold the lineages of an abolitionist psychiatry and of neuroscience and of movement, of working for liberation, for building a different world. So those are some of the threads that'll guide me in what I might offer today. Before we start, a couple of accessibility things. I imagine you all are quite familiar with the Zoom world these days, and if it is supportive, there is closed captions available on the bottom, the square with the CC inside it, or it might be available under the circle with the dot 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 for more. Any other access needs, anything else that allows you to be more present, more here with us, psychologically, physically, emotionally, please let me know in the chat, out loud, direct message, whatever is easiest. And a global content warning for today. Today is on the fifth precept on intoxication, on intoxicants. So substances will come up. And rather than doing maybe a typical thing I would do of, hey, this is the period I'm talking about it and I'm putting it down, just a global content notice that that will come up throughout the session today. I trust that you all are able to take care of yourselves, enter and leave the space as you need. As always, everything offered here is just that, an offering. Take what works, leave what doesn't. And in terms of offering, I do have a plan. And people are more important than plan. So if at any point something else needs to be tended to in the room, I invite your disruption. I invite your collective pointing to what needs to be cared for in the room. Yeah? All right. Well, let's start with chanting the precepts as we have been doing these last many weeks. Sorry, I've not been able to join in person given my own schedule, but I have been watching the videos and it's been really sweet. So I'm going to drop that into the, oh, Reverend Leanne's already got it. All right. So inviting you to come off of mute if that feels okay for you. Inviting in the chaos. Feel free to follow me in terms of the pacing. Follow me in terms of pacing that keeps us closest to together. And feel free to lead the way in terms of your eloquence, your emphasis, your power. I vow not
Vow not
to kill.
to kill.
You
I
have
vow not
Vow
to
not
not
take
to
to
what is
take
not
take
what
given.
is
what
not
is
given.
given.
I
I
vow
vow
not to
Not
not to
misuse
misuse
sexuality.
sexuality.
I
I
vow to
vow to
refrain
to
from
refrain
false
from
refrain
speech.
from false
speech.
speech.
I
I
vow to
vow to
refrain from
refrain
Refrain
from
from
intoxication.
intoxicants.
intoxicants.
I'm going to do that one more time. And an invitation to drop a layer deeper, to come into your full body and see if there's something that, some core of each of these precepts that feels alive for you when we say them. Yeah? I vow not to
Not to
kill.
kill.
I
I
vow
vow
I
not to
vow
not to
take
not to
what
take
is
take what
not
what is
is
not
given.
not
given.
given.
I
I
vow
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 to
now
not
not
to
misuse
to
misuse
sexuality.
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 I
I
vow to
vow to
refrain from
Refrain
false
from
refrain
false
speech.
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 I
I
vow to
vow
Vow
to
to
refrain from
refrain
refrain from
from
intoxicants.
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 I don't know about you all, but I sometimes have quite an aversive reaction to the precepts or frankly rules in general. In fact, when Reverend Leanne first offered this, oh, let me orient for a moment. What I expect to do is I will offer some words around the precepts, particularly the fifth precept. There may be some practice sprinkled into that. I imagine I will do a little of that. And then when we close, there'll be an opportunity for some collective discussion and some time in some breakout rooms or individual journal reflection. Okay? And that'll bring us to the end of the hour. So I have my internal reactions to these precepts, and they have on and off been present with me in my Buddhist path, but not central. So when Reverend Leanne came to me and invited me to offer something on the precepts with you all, there was understandably a fair amount of contraction in my body and some hesitance. I As I specifically said, I'm not sure if I'm your girl for this. I am not actually committed to avoiding all intoxicants. And to be fair, not, many schools of Buddhism hold that similarly, from Soto Zen to various Vajrayana lineages. Um, so at the very least, I couldn't possibly be doing the one on intoxicants. So here we are, offering for this series and specifically the one on intoxicants. And my high school history teacher used to say, I would probably be a much better math teacher because history was easy. I read it on the bus, everything I did, everything I was, it was grounded in reading about history. But math, I hated it. And so I had to learn it in a different way. So, channeling Mr. Mills here, I would love to offer from what this journey has been, not as an expert, but as a facilitator, one who makes easier, creating some space along the way and sharing my journey. Buddhism came to the West in a number of different ways. And I think as many of you all are in Zen, you all know that actually there's a lot of lineages that came directly from heritage Buddhists. Unfortunately, that has not been mostly my experience. Most of it has been in Western convert Buddhism, which has been mostly Theravadan, but also a particular flavor of Theravadan. As with many things the West has colonized and brought over here, much of the heart of it has been pulled out, has been extracted. Our focus on silent meditation, which is literally two of the Eightfold Path. Yeah, right concentration and right mindfulness. And we've, done away with most of the rest. And yet, sila, ethics, are literally three of the Eightfold Path, right? We could argue even more than that, but at the very least, right speech, right action, right livelihood. So clearly it is important, and yet I am in this contradiction of feeling it as another set of rules. The part of me inside that rejects authority, which can be very helpful in movement organizing, but don't tell me what to do. That makes sense in a really Judeo-Christian world where we are now required, not we, I'm in California, but we in Texas are now required to put the Ten Commandments in classrooms, right? This is an increasingly obsessed with the rules and the performance of goodness at the expense of actual humans and life. But also within my tradition of Islam, I am incredibly lucky to about every 4 to 5 months, I get to work with a handful of college students, Ismaili Muslims, who are locally in different cities and states, coming together for a weekend of deepening into the more esoteric aspects of Ismaili Islam. And I get to guide them through some of the contemplative practices grounded in Islam and the ways that they dovetail with Buddhism, really spacious, expansive, spiritually grounded things. But then one of the nights, we always have this 2 or 3 hour FAQ where they can ask all the questions that they don't get to ask. All the aunties that would give them side eye or gossip if they dared to ask something, now they can actually ask the question. So it takes somewhere between 5 and 30 seconds before the taboo questions come up. Can I get a tattoo? Is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that? Can I drink? And that I gotta say that the obsession with the taboos and rights and wrongs rather than the engagement with communion with the divine, it hurts my soul. And we're so attuned to that. We're so attuned to that. Yet the Buddha talked about these precepts as protections, as supports for our spiritual path, for our insight, for our sangha building, rather than hard and fast rules. Reverend Leanne offered me this book, a Zen Precepts Retreat with Sherry Huber, Good Life. And I'm going to read something that really stuck with me about how to frame the precepts. I swear I'm getting to the fifth one. We'll get there. So I don't want to use the precepts to punish myself. They are to help me be more kind, to help me live more in that compassion that is my true nature, to be in touch with the beauty and sweetness that is life. That's how I want people to experience the precepts as a gentle, loving hand in the middle of your back that softly guides you through life, a mentoring, loving kindness that wants you to experience all the joy that life has to offer. I love that. Indigenous Theravadan Buddhist teacher Jen Koragul has often talked about the path as the refinement of joy. How can this be an exercise in deeper joy? So when I feel into each of the precepts and look for that, what is the deeper aspiration where I can drop into compassion, where it feels good to do good? When I drop underneath the don't kill, abstain from killing, I feel into reverence, devotion, reverence for life. When I drop under the don't steal in the scarcity separation of that, I feel into abundance and mutuality. When I drop under the simplicity of don't cause sexual misconduct, don't engage in sexual misconduct, I hear consent and care and intimacy and right relationship. When I drop under right speech and abstaining from lying, when I drop under the no lying, knowing and speaking truth, especially in these times, truth to power, being in our integrity, that's what I feel into. So, this last one, abstaining from intoxicants that cloud the mind, inviting a breath, a deepening into that. What do you feel when you feel into it? What is that deeper aspiration that manifests partially as the do not engage with intoxicants that cloud the mind? What's the energy underneath? Inviting you to speak out loud or drop in the chat. To see versus not to see. To stay open to what is. Clarity. Yeah, yeah. To be present. Fewer preconceived ideas. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. How does that feel in the body? What does it feel like to drop into seeing versus not seeing, to clarity, to presence, to openness? For me, I feel some similar things. I drop into clarity, to deeper awareness and presence, to caring for this heart, mind, this body, right? And with that kind of clear-headedness, I can act in more integrity, right? And be more in alignment with my values. In some ways, I can engage in the other precepts more easily, more consistently when my mind is not clouded. Take a few moments for practice, and then I'll continue. Let's drop into this clarity piece. Inviting the body to be in a posture that feels delicious or at least as comfortable as possible for the body in this moment. Eyes might be open or closed. This will be short, maybe 5-ish minutes. Perhaps taking a breath or two if that's supportive to you, or another way of grounding, settling. And coming home to your anchor. That anchor might be that home base, might be your breath. It might be the feeling of the body resting on the seat or the floor. It might be the sounds around you. Engaging this quality of attention, this ability to see with the piercing clarity. What can you clearly see? What are the details that draw you in to a piercing clarity of this anchor? Engaging this quality of clarity. For me, I often notice joy and intimacy co-arise with that kind of piercing clarity. And when the mind inevitably wanders and we wake up, celebrating that moment of waking up, of clarity, of presence, of aliveness again. Perhaps even comparing the moment before with the moment of awakefulness. And attending again with that clarity. And the piercing clarity quality of attention for me is part of clarity. Alongside attention is awareness. If attention is the laser pointer, tiny focal point, awareness is the lamp that illuminates the whole surroundings. As you attend with clarity, can we bring in the quality of clarity to awareness? What's the spaciousness, the context that surrounds the piercing clarity on the object? Clear, open space around the sensations that co occur with the breath or the body on the earth. Taking another few moments to find this balance between the clear attention and the clear awareness. There's something for me that's really powerful about intentionally drawing in particular qualities. An invitation to play with that clarity, both in terms of the attention and the awareness throughout the rest of our time. So, diving a little bit more deeply into this, I want to share a little bit more of the why, and then broadening this idea of intoxication, and then sharing a little bit about how to take this home with you or ways to work with it that have been supportive for me. I was that annoying kid that was always asking why. I wanted to know the answers to everything, much to the chagrin of my parents, my teachers, everyone. My second grade teacher said that I should be a lawyer because of how much I argued. But I swear it was grounded in the curiosity and the why. If we look at this, I'm looking at the Pali here, Sura, Maria, Majja, intoxicants, fermented, distilled liquors. It names specifically alcoholic beverages with each of those three examples. But then this next word, pamadatana, the basis or state of heedlessness, of negligence, of carelessness. That is the vow that we're taking. This actually makes it quite a bit different than the other four. The other four precepts historically were actually already in the social milieu. Jains, the Brahmins, the elite Hindu caste, many of these other traditions engaged in at the very least the first four of those precepts. The fifth one seemed to be, from my understanding of this, what we understand historically now was an offering that the Buddha made that was different. And he actually seem to have intentionally preempted the annoying why askers like me by adding a reason, which he didn't do to any of the other precepts, right? All the other precepts are pretty straightforward. But this Pamadatthana, he actually says, okay, these are the things to abstain from, and this is why. They cause heedlessness, they cause negligence, right? Um, yeah. So another translation, as Bhikkhu Bodhi puts it, wines, liquors, and intoxicants, the basis for negligence, or that part that cloud the mind and heart. Pamada, negligence, heedlessness. I am obsessed with etymology, so I love going back to what is the root of this and what does it mean? I do believe that etymology holds some of the collective unconscious of a culture. So going back to that in terms of Pali, this word pamada, I started to look around. Where else is it? There is a whole Pamada Vihari Sutta. It is essentially an offering more broadly into one who lives in heedlessness versus one who lives in heedfulness. So I'll read you a paragraph of what it means to live in heedlessness. Monks, when a monk lives with no restraint over the faculty of the eye, the mind is stained with the forms that are cognizable by the eye. When the mind is stained, there is no gladness. When there is no gladness, there is no rapture. When there is no rapture, there's no tranquility. When there is no tranquility, there is suffering. When there is suffering, the mind does not become concentrated. When the mind is not concentrated, the Dhammas do not become manifest. When the Dhammas do not become manifest, one is considered to be living in heedlessness. And so the sutta goes on with the faculty of the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind, right? Form, sound, odors, tastes, sensations, thoughts. That each of these sense doors are places in which we can engage in restraint, otherwise risk the standing of the mind that impacts our joy and the downstream effects of inhibiting our concentration and wisdom. He really enjoys these cause and effect things. Some of you all might see, and if we had more time to dive into the Pali, we can pick apart some of the places where he's engaging in words that are quite similar to the seven factors of mindfulness or the qualities required by the jhanas. Yeah? To speak to speak in neuroscientific terms, if I were to throw on my psychiatry hat for a moment, it's hijacking a reward network. Are the ventral tegmental area and nucleus accumbens where these dopamine networks drive us to do something. It's not actually about joy. There's a drive that's quite different. Or in the opposite of the classic tanha, tanha is both the grasping for and the aversion from, right? A craving for something to be different. That limbic system, our fight or flight system that is trying to push away a thing. Each of these make it very difficult to engage our prefrontal cortex, that part of us in the front of the brain that allows us to make our most skillful decisions. As Sherry Huber says in that book, the addiction itself is stupefying, the attachment rather than the substance, right? The way that it hijacks our networks makes it more difficult for us to engage most skillfully. And yet, some substances are much more likely to hijack us than others. Through a deep healing journey of my own body recently, around some GI things that I've been working through, I ended up engaging in a Whole30 diet, which I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with. A pretty extreme elimination diet. No grains at all, no legumes, no dairy, but also no sugar, no alcohol, and the way I chose to do it was no caffeine. In some ways, the results kind of felt a bit like retreat. I won't say it was easy. I had plenty of my frustrations, including 2.5 hours in the grocery store the first time reading every label and Googling everything. But some of it actually felt like a retreat. The simplicity of dried dates, bursting with flavor, like absolute ecstasy. Everything, the notch is turned up all the way, right? I'm so present and appreciative of the simple pleasures versus my baseline sweet tooth. This matches the research. The dopamine receptors in the nucleus accumbens in the ventral tegmental area are reward centers. There's a downregulation of those receptors when they are over rewarded, which is to say, when we are given too much of it, the body says, no, 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 we don't need to be activated that much. So then it takes more and more to activate those dopamine receptors, right? Whether that's cocaine or sugar or something else, it then compels us further to do more to activate that dopamine drive rather than a values aligned, clear, settled desire. The difference, to use the Pali words of tanha, craving, the cause of suffering, from chanda, desire, healthy desire. In this consumption vein, Thich Nhat Hanh has another version of the precepts. This one's long. I'm going to read the whole thing, see what resonates and see what doesn't. A very different take on the five precepts or the five mindfulness trainings. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption, I am committed to cultivating good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, and my society by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I will practice looking deeply into how I consume the four kinds of nutriments, namely edible foods, sense impressions, volition, and consciousness. I am determined not to gamble or to use alcohol, drugs, or any other products which contain toxins, such as certain websites, electronic games, music, TV programs, films, magazines, books, conversations. I will practice coming back to the present moment to be in touch with the refreshing, healing, and nourishing elements in me and around me, not letting regrets and sorrow drag me back into the past, nor letting anxieties, fear, or craving pull me out of the present moment. I am determined not to try to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I will contemplate interbeing and consume in a way that preserves peace, joy, and well-being in my body and consciousness, and in the collective body and consciousness of my family, my society, and the earth. Really broad understanding. So I'll admit that little part of me that's like, wait, is there another way to hold this precept? Do I have to give up alcohol? has actually found 5 million other ways that I need to be attending to consumption and intoxication. Pamada. The root of that is mada. There is, in fact, a whole mada sutta, the intoxication sutta. And believe it or not, that's not where he's talking about alcohol and substances. But even more broadly, three entirely different intoxications, specifically TikTok intoxication, Wordle intoxication, and no, I'm just kidding. We didn't get there. But he does talk about three other intoxications that I would not have thought would have been here. And yet, if we know the story of the Buddha and the four sights which told him it's time to leave the prince life and go out into the world, then perhaps we'll recognize these three. Yobanamada, the intoxication with youth. Arogyamada, the intoxication with health. And Jivatamada, the intoxication with life. Youth, health, and life, in contrast to birth, old age, sickness, and death, right? That is what he wrote. That is what he offered in what is now written as the Intoxication Sutta. And he didn't say don't appreciate youth, health, or life, right? So what's the risk? If it's the attachment, not the object, for me, the aversion to them. In the Sukhamala Sutta and the Mada Sutta, they're kind of related. He talks about the aversion to these things, to sickness and old age and death, being not appropriate, not fitting for him, right? That aversion, right? This is the grounds for ageism, for ableism, for saneism, and for more broadly, for a contracted, closed heart that is not open to everyone, right? The aversion I can have sometimes to my parents growing older, to my own injured body, injury after injury, versus the preciousness of life, of body, of wisdom, of change. It also causes ethical misconduct, he says, of body, speech, and mind, particularly through chasing sensual desire and not prioritizing that which makes us truly happy. My sweet tooth, engaging in the unhealthy foods, or being a little reckless climbing despite having should have learned and listened to the warning signs of my shoulders starting to hurt and ending up with this overuse injury, or generally getting lost in the sensual pleasures in a way that I'm not devoting as much time to my practice, to samvega, the spiritual urgency, right? So, what a broad way to hold all the different things that we can be intoxicated by. It's kind of endless. And we can't do all of this. It's too much to take in all at once. But it offers a lot of options. In psychiatry, over the last couple of decades, we've shifted from pure abstinence to a harm reduction framework. Is there anyone familiar with the harm reduction framework? Yeah, yeah. Great. It's really entered yeah. How do we reduce harm? How do we minimize the harm rather than trying to remove it completely in a way that actually risks us not removing it at all, right? In Islam, my home tradition, where like Buddhism, I can have wait, am I Buddhist enough? Am I Muslim enough? Because of a very clear do not drink law in there, right? That actually happened gradually. It was a move towards abstinence, but that happened piecemeal. First, there was the surah in the Quran about highlighting the harm of alcohol. Then later, it was the surah highlighting that actually, no, don't drink during prayers or before prayers. And then finally was the surah in the Quran, which came even later, that not to use alcohol at all. I think of it much like my old violin teacher, Chuck Sherba, once upon a time would say, what is the smallest change that would make the biggest difference? What's the smallest change that would make the biggest difference? Or in the words of Larry Yang, speaking to harm reduction in regards to conduct more broadly, may I be loving, open, and aware in this moment. And if I cannot be loving, open, and aware in this moment, may I be kind. And if I cannot be kind, may I be non-judgmental. If I cannot be non-judgmental, may I not cause harm. And if I cannot cause harm, may I cause the least harm possible. What if we took that approach to consumption? Saw it as a North Star that we may not actually be able to reach because of the sheer amount of intoxications. But much like the desire for a liberated, more just, and compassionate world, a North Star that guides our direction. And maybe we'll find the spaceship that'll actually get us to the North Star, but suffice it to at least have us go in the right direction consistently and together. I want to offer some space for some shared reflection, and then we'll end our time together with an alternate version from the Manzanita village and how they rewrote the precepts in a really beautiful way. So, gonna invite Reverend Leanne to bring us into breakout rooms. If you would rather do some solo journaling rather than pair in a breakout room, just add a little star to the front of your name, or otherwise share it in the chat if that feels complicated. And we'll pair those who want to be paired and journal otherwise. And if it's supportive to hear the question first, where in my relationship to consumption of that which clouds the mind could I make the smallest change that might make the biggest difference?
So as I think you're writing that, I'm going to say that I did do pairings, and because uh, you know your co-host, you got put into a room, but and I think it will send you in, and then you can just come back out. Okay, and
Um, 1 second to put it in the chat in case it doesn't show.
then how long did you want people to be?
Let's do 7 minutes.
Okay, all right. So in general, self time because I'm not skilled enough to make it into the actual minutes you're in there.
Yeah,
And
no
Ben will
worries.
give you a sense of when it is. All right.
7 minutes total for both people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Take care. Have fun.
All right. Welcome back. In these last few minutes, I would love to hear what's coming up for y'all in response to Dharma Talk, in response to some of your reflections or conversation. What's alive for you in this?
I'll just say something that I was reflecting on and we were talking about just if we think about this as um ways that the attention is impacted by, external forces and how we can get really clouded, really foggy, kind of get more create more hindrances that we're just talking about like the forces of this daily life that we live and how much I was talking about how much task switching there is just if you have a lot of responsibilities to different people and different communities regular work, family, health, just things are so very, very, very full. And then people expect you to use technology to communicate, which has, a certain effect on the clarity and the stability of mind and just how to manage that. And so, ongoing question in my life, that's for sure. So we talked a little
Yeah.
bit about that. Thank you.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested.
Um, we talked about food and media, specifically phone use,
Mm.
and how even when you make progress in some way, either by like I'm in the practice period, so I just don't have I'm not using the computer the same the same way, but I am using it somewhat for work. Um, or when you are successful in losing weight, that sometimes you're still going to have problems, and how to the kinds of gyrations, at least in my case, that I go through to justify like why it's okay this time is like a huge use of energy. And I study digital media, so that's even worse because it gives me more material to kind of
Mm.
beat myself up with, not beat myself up, but confuse myself, right? Like I'm trying to make this extremely complicated argument when there really isn't an argument there most of the time.
Mm. Yeah. So much influencing us around us. Yeah. Yours and Nina's share, actually. Like in med school, we talk about it feels like drinking from a fire hose. It's kind of what it feels like for all of us all the time, like the forced consumption of so much. There's one more share, one more something that wants to come alive before we chant and close out. Yeah.
I appreciated the Larry Yang quote that you shared, and I've read that before, and it's interesting. I thought it was so sad the first time I read it. I was like, oh my god, wow. There's like, and then today I was like, well, yeah, that's when we vow, we're just not going to become perfect. I mean, a perfect human being is not the perfect human being we think it is. So we have to become just our regular human being. And I feel like the Larry Yang quote really gives me more than just vowing. We just keep vowing. There's a lot of room in there, and the Larry Yang is like, well, this is a human life, and that is a great life. Like if I can do what Larry Yang was describing, I feel like today I'm like, oh yeah, that is a vow. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I really love that quote. And there's so many places in the suttas and in our own lives where we can see that the gradual process, the meeting of our stretch zone, rather than where we're real comfortable or where we're overwhelmed. That's our path to actual, genuine, sustainable growth. I'm not convinced that we can be truly happy if we ignore what the precepts offer us in our life. I am quite convinced that we can turn these precepts, especially for me, this fifth one, into these protective offerings, either into a source of suffering, a way to hate and judge ourselves and others, or as that loving hand on our backs that invites us into deeper and deeper presence and joy in this life. This is the choice that we have. I'm going to offer the Manzanita village out there. Yes, take care, Nina. For us to close out together. Here's one alternate version, and of course, I encourage you all to come up with your own. I'm sure you all have at some point. All right. Inviting you to come off of mute if that feels okay to do. Invite the chaos. Follow me for timing. Aware of the contamination
contamination
and
and
desecration of the
desecration of the
world
world,
and of my
and my
responsibility for
responsibility for
life
life
as it
as it
manifests through
manifests through
me.
manifests through
me.
me.
I
I
I
stand
stand
in
stand
the
in
in
the
the
presence of
presence
presence
the
of
of
the
the
ancestors,
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 the
the
earth,
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 and
and
future
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 generations,
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 and
and
vow
and
to
vow
vow
to
to
cultivate
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 discernment
discernment
and
discernment and
care
and
care
care
in what
in
I
in what
what
take
I
I
into
take
my
take
into my
into my
body
body
and
body
mind.
and
and
mind.
mind.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you,
y'all. Bye.
Rahil.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Bye.
everyone. Take good care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah, bye bye.